Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healing Conversations. My name is Einav Avni. What am I? An alignment coach and energy healer. There's so many different things that I do recently, so all of these kind of came forward. But anyway, that's me. But this podcast, Healing Conversation, is all about natural healing, all about spreading the message of, helping people get unstuck and into alignment, in any way that is physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So enough about all of that. Today in the studio, I'm very excited to introduce you to our guest, Jonathan Glass. Jonathan, it's wonderful, wonderful to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So tell us something about you. Let's get started.
Okay. So I'm a naturopathic doctor, acupuncturist, and an Ayurvedic practitioner. And I've been in practice for quite a long time, since the early 80s, maybe before many of your listeners were even born. But which seems kind of wild and crazy, but here it is. And yeah, I have a busy one-on-one practice, and I work with all kinds of people and conditions, anything from regular, trying to just keep people in balance and in good health, and also dealing with a lot of immune issues, energy issues, stress issues, so many different health conditions that walk through the door, pain, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the first question that comes to my mind, you say since around the 80s, and I think the world was really probably not yet ready, or at least not as ready as it is now to all of these kind of things that you were describing.
Yes, it's true. And I look back and I sort of don't I was sort of surprised at myself that I got into this, because it was really against the grain mostly of the time. And it was, I think sometimes we have in life, we have pivotal moments, and I really believed, somehow I think I knew on some level, that this was the wave of the future, natural health. I just had a knowing and I trusted it. So
Yeah,
I just went with it, and I was very excited about learning about this type of thing.
yeah.
So
But
kind of went
how,
for it.
how were you introduced to it? Where did that come from? Because I remember especially, meditation, right? Meditation was definitely a woohoo
Yeah,
kind of thing,
a big
back then.
part of it. I think it comes in phases. I think part of it was my own health issues as a kid. I had very serious allergies. I was allergic to milk, which I didn't know until I was about 18. And I used to drink glasses and glasses of milk every day. And I didn't know it. And then, but another thing that happened, I was at summer camp when I was 9 years old, and I was playing baseball and I hurt my arm. So I went to the infirmary and it was very painful. And it was crazy. The nurse knew Japanese shiatsu massage, which, I mean, this was in 19, what year was this? This was 1969, you know? And sure enough, she worked on me. And 10 minutes later, my arm was fine. And I remember thinking, like, how is that even possible? Because I was in significant pain. It wasn't just a little, I thought it was something really serious.
Mm.
And I was totally fine, 100%. And it kind of, that stuck with me. And at that point, I just got interested in, I even imagined doing it on other people. And people said, oh, you're really good at that. I didn't know what I was doing, but oh, yeah, that's really good. So that encouraged me. And then when I was 16, I learned about meditation. I mean, many of you might have heard about the book Be Here Now or by Ram Dass. And then I was reading uh, books by Carlos Castaneda, which are these, mystical shaman books. They
Mhm.
were great books. So me and my friend all summer were reading these books and meditating. We taught ourselves to meditate. And, being 16 years old, probably, I mean, like I was filled with all kinds of anxiety as a 16-year-old. And I noticed that, wow, I really can feel inner peace. This is amazing. I didn't know that was even possible, you know? And so, just, one thing led to another. And I think that opened up my mind to this other reality that it is possible to feel better. And then in college, I met uh, a guy at a health food store. He owned a health food store, and I was a soccer player, and I played hockey and soccer, but I had lung issues. I was a good athlete, but I would have these recurring bronchial infections, partly because of my diet, partly because I was guzzling down milk and eating a lot of cheese and thinking that was good for me. And he gave me a book called Back to Eden, which is one of the original naturopathic books. It's like a Bible. And I just opened it up to allergies. And it said, stop dairy. So overnight, and he said, stop meat and dairy. So overnight, I stopped everything. All I could eat was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and iceberg lettuce, but I felt better. My lungs started getting better, and I wasn't coughing so much. And then I sort of had an aha that, oh my God, what I put in my body matters. It actually has an impact. And then later I learned how to eat, that kind of thing. So those things were, I think, were pivotal moments in terms of me getting that this is a reality that we can really make some significant shifts and feel better. And I just got my curiosity going, and it became a passion pretty early on. So yeah.
But you know what I really like about what you're saying is, in opposed to a lot of other people that I hear, is that actually for you it was very organic because it really came from situations that you experienced and then your curiosity. And like you say, right, anxiety, I didn't even know that I could get better or that feel better or notice a difference. And because
Exactly.
if you went to someone with anxiety now and you said, try this, there's a lot of resistance and a lot of, disbelief that says actually, not even going to try. But for you, you tried it first and then you realized that it was possible. And
Right.
it's just wonderful, really.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. It was really organic, which I feel fortunate in that way that I feel like I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing, you
Mm.
know, and not everybody's meant to be doing something in the health field. It could be whatever you're sort of gifted at. And turns out that I um, I love what I do, and what's nice about what I do is there's always more to learn,
Right.
and I like learning, and there's always more. There's always something else.
Yeah.
So it's a never ending education process.
And so I imagine that you started with a naturopathy. This is a word that I cannot actually say properly, so forgive
I
me.
say naturopathy. People say it differently. I say naturopathy just because it rolls
It's
off my
easier.
tongue easier that way. Think
Okay.
of naturopathy. Yeah, yeah.
So
Actually, I started with because I got into meditation kind of first. Then I found out about Ayurveda, which is a system of medicine that is related to the yoga system.
mhm.
And that was very intriguing to me. And I ended up going to India for a while, and I learned quite a bit around the yoga uh, teachings. And then I learned about the Ayurveda. And I didn't really know there was this sort of connection.
Mhm.
Yoga has a lot of mental, emotional, and spiritual benefits. What I didn't know that there was a whole system, a yogic like system of medicine. And by then, my curiosity and I'd done enough reading that it made a lot of sense to me. So that was my original passion. And then, as an athlete and being quite physical, uh, I would sometimes have back issues, and I started going to a local acupuncturist. And little did I know, back this was in California, and she turned out to be one of the most famous acupuncturists in California. Back then, nobody knew who she was yet. And later on, when I moved back to Boston, she became very famous. She ended up working with a lot of AIDS patients.
Mhm.
But I would get an acupuncture treatment, and I would feel so much better. It would literally help my back. And again, I found out that those things were meaningful. And then I was a little bit practical because back then, Ayurveda was not really accepted at all. Where acupuncture, you could get a license. And I
Right.
figured, well, with a license, I could have more freedom to recommend herbs. And, with Ayurveda, it would just be a certification and it wasn't really heard of. And I did have some degree of practicality of like, well, I have to make a living, you know. And so I ended up studying a form of acupuncture called classical five element, which is very aligned with Ayurveda. So that appealed to me. And so I studied acupuncture first, all along studying nutrition. And then I got uh, certified in Ayurveda. And then later I became a naturopath. And by the time I studied naturopathy, there wasn't a ton that I learned in the school because I had already been studying so much,
Mm.
but it was still good. I learned a few things.
One
Yeah.
or two. But acupuncture five elements, I can't say that I have heard of this. What does that?
Ah,
What is that, and how is that different to other acupunctures that we may have come across?
okay. So there's many, many styles of acupuncture. And one way that I just like there's different forms of martial arts. There's some forms of martial arts that are very aggressive. Some are mostly using the legs. Some are very responsive, like Tai Chi. It's non-aggressive. It's more like, okay, if someone punches, you use their arm and you use gravity. It's a very gentle, actually, martial art. Where
Mhm.
some like Taekwondo is very aggressive and strong. And in all of Chinese history, there was different cultures, and there was acupuncture that was designed more for the farmers because they would get illnesses due to the weather conditions. And then there was acupuncture that was more for the emperor class because they were indoors a lot and they would overeat and overindulge, things like that. So the five element system uh, is a very ancient system, and it's based in both in Ayurveda and Chinese medicine. There's five elements that are based from nature. They're a
Mhm.
little bit different. Chinese medicine uses metal and wood. Ayurveda uses ether and air, but they're similar. And basically, it's a constituents of what makes up the universe. And the same thing that makes up the material universe makes up the human body. And so, like in Ayurveda, what we're looking at symptoms, but we're also looking what is someone's constitution, meaning do they have more earth, do they have more water, do they have more fire? And that determines often the types of symptoms that person will get. And that's also true with five element acupuncture. So it's called constitutional, meaning we don't we can treat symptoms, but we're usually looking to treat the underlying elemental imbalance.
Mm.
So oftentimes people will have a tendency toward a fire imbalance or an earth imbalance. So we always treat that element because it's a deeper way of treating someone, as opposed to I have a sore elbow, I'm just going to treat your elbow and forget about the rest of you. Where in five element, it's really all about treating the whole person and then also treating the symptom. So it's like going a little bit deeper. And so
Mm.
that appealed to me also.
It sounds very much in alignment with Ayurveda, right?
Yes,
Because of
exactly.
the balance and
Right,
everything that needs to come together.
right,
How
exactly.
fascinating. So someone that comes in, off the street, with
Yeah.
some pains or complaints or whatever it is that they come in with, then how do you decide which of your modalities or methods to approach?
Yeah. I would say, 90% of the people that come in, I do some acupuncture with. And I have to say that the more I do acupuncture, I mean, I've been doing it, I got licensed in 95. Um, the more I do it, the more I appreciate it. It's really an amazing type of healing work. And of course, different people do different styles, and some styles might work better for others. And of course, it always depends on the practitioner. But generally speaking, acupuncture is it's a very profound modality. And as over the years, I see different types of stressors and symptoms change in society, especially the last, before COVID and during COVID, and so many things have changed. And acupuncture is so helpful for bringing people very quickly back to a state of of balance and just feeling like themselves again. It can restore people's state of mind very, very quickly, often, and also can be remarkably helpful for symptoms. And so I always do that, but I generally will also do quite a bit of assessment, getting to know what's going on with the person. I mean, if someone comes in, I have neck pain, then yeah, I'm happy just to treat their neck, and I will do that,
Mhm.
always keeping in mind their whole person. But generally speaking, a lot of people come in and they have this issue, that issue, digestive issue, hormonal issue, aches and pains, um, so many different things.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'll do what's called kinesiology, muscle testing, to identify what's through muscle testing, sometimes through blood testing. So I'll kind of pull in whatever tools occur to me when I'm working with that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I use muscle testing in my energy healing. I
Right.
use it a lot, and like you said, the more you use it, the more you appreciate it. And I feel the same way about my
Exactly.
modalities, which are really the emotion code,
Yes.
body code, and belief code. And it's like,
Beautiful stuff.
it's
Beautiful
like
work.
wow.
Wonderful work. Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? I mean,
It's-
I remember the first time I ever gave a treatment to somebody in acupuncture and, you know, feel the pulse. And because the pulse gives us a lot of information, the left hand pulse, that's the heart, that's the liver, that's the kidney, that's the lungs, that's the spleen, that's the other kidney, and it gives us information about how the energy is running through the body. And I remember thinking, okay, when we have this pulse, call a pulse picture, then we do these points to balance out that pulse. I remember doing it the first time. I felt the pulse. I almost fainted because it did what it was supposed to do. So, you know, so it's an amazing system. It really is.
and I guess one thing that a lot of people these days, a lot of symptoms that they experience are things like
Mm,
fatigue or
yeah,
I don't know if insomnia so much, but not having very good quality of sleep or a lot of stress, like you mentioned, or yeah, anxiety, these kind of things. So what are the things that, I mean, what would you do with someone that comes with any of these symptoms, and are they all the same, or is it really different?
no, no, they're not. No, they're not the same. I mean, there are similar ways to with acupuncture. I might treat someone. Five people come in with sleep. I might treat three of those five people with a similar pattern. But some of that can be identified with the pulse. It also depends if the person, say, some people have a hard time falling asleep, but when they fall asleep, they're okay. Some people fall asleep okay, but they wake up and they can't go back to sleep. And that can be two very different patterns that are there. And then I also like to look at, well, what are the stressors? What are the things that are causing stress? So you have to look at lifestyle. You have to look at their diet. Also look at how late are they eating at night? And what are they eating at night? And then, are they on their phone at 11 or 12 o'clock at night? All these things and these are sort of modern, these weren't problems back in the 90s, but they're problems now.
Mm.
Because as soon as you look at that phone, your brain thinks, oh, it's daytime. Let's party. Let's stay awake. There's more to do. So it can be and it, shuts off melatonin, all that blue light that comes in. The blue light has a direct impact on the glands in the brain, and so those are real problems. So I have to look at what are some of the things that the people are doing, and then there's ways to through muscle testing and identifying. Okay, is it high cortisol? Is it too much liver energy pent up? And you can feel that in the pulse. And if you calm that down, then oftentimes people can sleep better. So there's a lot of different approaches. There's herbs that we can use and nutrients that we can use to help with people for that. Like, for instance, the nutrient GABA is very good for helping people fall asleep, or valerian, but it's not so good for people that wake up in the middle of the night. That might be something different.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm just thinking about, of course, about me now. I mean, I love drinking bedtime tea before my sleep. And I
Hmm.
noticed that with different types of tea, my sleep is different. So sometimes I sleep really like a log, and then in other types of tea with, of course, different ingredients, sometimes I go to sleep very well, and then all of a sudden I wake up and I'm like, and now what?
Yeah. You know, the herb, like for example, valerian. Valerian is, most people know Valium, the drug, but
Right. Okay.
Valium is the pharmaceutical, in one sense, version of valerian, but it's much more addictive.
Yeah.
But valerian, and I noticed it for me first, that it would make me fall asleep like a log, but at usually 3 o'clock in the morning, boom, I would just wake up completely awake. And then I started finding out that other people would have the same experience with valerian. So even though it can help you fall asleep, when you wake up, you just wake up and you're up. So certain herbs have different impacts on people, in different ways. So you have to kind of track that. Some people have what's called excess energy, and you have to calm that down. Some people are actually deficient. It seems counterintuitive, but some people don't have the energy to
To go
sleep
to
because
sleep.
it takes energy to sleep, believe it or not. You know, so we need the right energy to sleep also. So sometimes you have to build up the energy with good diet, good nutrients, and then they can sleep better also.
My brother used to say that. He used to say that he doesn't have the energy to go to sleep.
That's funny. Well, it's kind of true. I mean, for some people, it's actually true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now I'm connecting the dots. So like, okay, you already knew back then.
Interesting.
So, so someone that comes, say, for example, with fatigue, and you're checking the energy, you're checking kind of what are the symptoms or the underlying, things that are going on there. Um, is it? I mean, how? I don't know. I guess that one question that a lot of people ask is really, when can I see results? How fast is it working and stuff like that. Would you even entertain this kind of question, or would you just go straight into that, it's a process and a journey?
Yeah, it kind of depends on how long a condition someone's had.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, oftentimes they say for every month you've had something, for every year you've had something, it takes a month to begin to rectify it. But that's not a hard and fast rule.
Hmm.
If you kind of nail it, if you kind of really get on it and kind of nail the imbalance, sometimes people can get results within a very short period of time. It may not be 100% consistent. I always say frequency, duration, and intensity. So, say and I learned this early on, someone would come, well, I'm still having sleep problems. This isn't working, for example. And then I've learned to inquire more. Well, are you sleeping better more frequently? Yes. Are you waking up less frequently? Yes. So, okay, so we're moving in the, yeah, but it's still happening. Okay, I'm not giving you a drug. We're working with your body, but we're moving in the right direction. So, in a very, like, for example, pain is very easy. So, someone has elbow pain. I'm saying elbow because I have a little elbow pain. I need to get a treatment. Um, so, is it after a treatment? Oh, it's not helping. Okay. Does it bother you any less? Yes. Is the pain less intense? Yes. Okay, so we're moving in the right direction. So that's often how it works. It's often a gradual process. But I always tell people, usually what we were taught in school to say 6 treatments before you know if you're going to get some benefit. I usually tell people 3 because
Hmm.
I don't want to be dragging someone along for 20 treatments and then say, oh, sorry, I didn't help you. So people should know something within 3 to 6 treatments, whether say with acupuncture, for example, whether they're being helped or not. And then, for example, if someone has sleep issues and they're eating, they're snacking with pizza at 11:30 at night, then okay, let's try to get that back to 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night, and give yourself a chance to, for your body to focus on sleep rather than digestion. in the middle of the night. So there's lifestyle things. Is your phone next to your head at night? Are you on your phone? And if you are, maybe put on some blue light blocking glasses, which can be really helpful to block that blue light, which affects the melatonin in the brain, the hormone. So there's a lot of things external that we have to look at. And then there's herbs and nutrients that can be very, very helpful. But in many cases, people will start noticing benefit quite soon, within a week or two. And then what I find generally is that it's not that hard to get 60 to 80% improvement. And then oftentimes you hit a plateau, often at around 80% improvement. And then that's where the hard work begins. You know, then it's like, okay, now it may slow down a little bit and we have to chip away and get the rest.
Mhm.
But people can notice benefits quite quickly.
Yeah. And then is it basically when they I heard somewhere that when the body has enough of what it needs, if it's lacking something, for example, then um it will take everything that it needs, and after that it will say, well, basically, no, that's it, done. Um, I think it was with a fish oil. I think someone was talking about some
Mm,
research that was done with fish oil that the body got all the actual nutrients that it needed, and then when it balanced itself and it no longer needed that, then the person would basically completely refuse to have that because it would instinctively know that it had enough. But I guess the question is in here, because it's all about balance and it's all about, like you said, there's so many different elements. Um, when someone gets better, is that it? Or is that really something that we need to keep on, tweaking and stuff like that as
right.
the makeup of things change?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends what someone wants. If somebody has low back pain and their low back pain is better, then maybe you won't see them again, or they want to be done. They may not want something more. But a lot of people are looking for deeper healing and balance, and stress relief, but also deeper connection to themselves.
Yeah,
And so there's always room for that. There's always room for that. Um, in fact, in the old days, in both in India and China, ancient times, the patient would only pay the practitioner when they were healthy.
right.
But when they had a symptom or they were sick or had an issue, they would be under the care of the practitioner. That was a different model, but they're under the care of the practitioner or the doctor, and that doctor would do whatever they needed to do to restore balance and health, and that would be no charge,
Yeah,
because they were, even in that paradigm, it's my responsibility to help keep you healthy. So yeah, you just pay. So it was a different model. It was a health model versus a disease model.
right, right.
And I say silly words like, you can go from good to gooder, you know,
I like that one.
and to more good, you know. So there's always, we have a tendency to go out of balance, and there's always a potential to get better and better and better, to feel more and more like yourself, or the ability to restore balance quicker than maybe previously.
Right,
you know, so that okay, I got whacked out a little bit, but I'm able to come back to myself and feel my energy and my health uh, quicker than I normally, did in the past. So, yeah, I mean, I have a lot of patients that see me once a week. I have a lot of patients that see me once a month, some every 3 months, and some I just see, they come and they go.
yeah,
They get what they want and they're off to something else. So it really varies. It kind of depends on what the person is really looking for.
right, right. So I want to ask the other thing that a lot of people are going through at the moment, and I guess that's also something that is more, keeping with the time, and that is about gut issues, constipation, bloating, all of that kind of stuff. So I guess, of course, like you say, right? I'm sure acupuncture would help with that.
Mhm.
Ayurvedic, medicine and all of that would help because of the balance and everything. Um, I want to talk a little bit about nutrition and stuff.
Sure.
But maybe I will just let you take this wherever you want to take this. What would you say to someone with either just normal constipation or chronic constipation or really just a lot of gut issues? What would you say to them? Where do we start? Where do they start?
Yeah, so what I would do personally would converse with them, find out what they're eating, what they're, I always like to start with the basic. It doesn't get cosmic right away.
Good. Yeah.
But basic. Okay, so are you eating a lot of dairy? Are you eating a lot of sugar? Are you eating a lot of wheat? Are you drinking a lot of alcohol? Are you drinking a lot of coffee? You know, and then there's other common food sensitivities for some people, soy and citrus and things like that can be. But the biggies are going to be wheat, dairy, and sugar for many people.
Mhm.
And so then, after inquiring and finding about their diet and their patterns, what they're doing, exercise, things like that, yoga, meditation, whatever it may be, then I'll get them on my treatment table and I do muscle testing. And I have vials of all the different foods. And what I also do is with muscle testing, and people do this differently, but I have people lying down, their arm is up like that. I'll put a little pressure on it and touch different acupuncture points that relate to the different organs. And then often if somebody comes with digestive issues, either their liver, their spleen, their stomach, small intestine, the large intestine will go weak. And so that indicates to me that that's a priority. Many people are like, okay, I have digestive problems, but they don't, or I'm constipated, but their large intestine doesn't show any energetic weakness, but something is coming up in the liver. So that helps me identify, okay, the constipation very well could have something to do more with the liver or the gallbladder, which secretes bile, which lubricates the intestines. So it's not that, so, there's an idea as above, so below. So if the liver and the liver in Ayurveda and Chinese medicine has to do with the free flow of energy in the digestive system. So in other words, if the liver is tight or stagnant or toxic or yeah, stressed, and that can be related to emotional issues also. So we look at that. The
Mhm.
liver holds a lot of emotion. Um, then we have to look at, okay, so to me in that situation, we have to look at what is stressing the liver out, and maybe we want to give the body, one, treat it with acupuncture, but two, give the body some herbs or nutrients that support the natural liver detox and support the gallbladder to be a little bit more flexible and decrease stagnation in the gallbladder so that it can secrete bile effectively to lubricate the intestines. Sometimes that's enough just to really get the bowels moving. Because, like, again, if that bile isn't coming out of the gallbladder into the small intestine and then the large intestine, then it doesn't get lubricated. And without that lubrication, there can be constipation.
Yeah.
So the idea is to kind of look at it. And then sometimes I will use I'm not opposed to using herbs that support healthy bowel elimination. I generally don't go to laxatives very often, but there's some nice, Ayurvedic herbs. For example, the herb Triphala is a very nice Ayurvedic herb that tonifies and strengthens the large intestine. But it's also very good for the blood. It has some liver benefit. It's anti-parasitical, but it's not a laxative like senna, for example. Senna, many people know the tea smooth move tea, and it can be very helpful, but it's really a basically causes irritation in the large intestine, so that the large intestine will go into peristalsis, and it makes people poop. So look, if somebody's really suffering and really backed up, then yeah, every once in a while. But it is addictive for the body will become dependent on it. So I'd rather, try to get to a deeper root of it. Also, sometimes people are very sensitive to dairy. And, if they are, then oftentimes either the protein in dairy, the lactose in dairy will be irritating to the gut. And in many milks, especially what's called beta casein A1, which is a protein in milk, has it actually is when that peptide or that protein structure breaks off, it becomes something called casomorphine.
Oh,
And the word morphine is there. So for many people, if they're eating a lot of cheese and dairy, it's actually they're putting a form of morphine in their gut, which is then making everything sluggish. So if that person is sensitive to dairy, we can find that out through muscle testing. Then we'll have them come off of dairy for a couple of weeks and just give their body a break, and then sometimes things will really start improving.
how
So
fascinating it is that, you know, and I for me, this is really interesting because people always come with a symptom and they say, fix that. And then,
right,
I say a lot of the time it's not about that. I really want to know about the root cause. I want to know the underlying root cause.
yes,
Where did it start? And for me, I'm interested in the emotions and the stress and all of that.
absolutely.
But it's so
Hmm.
fascinating, listen to what you were saying, that really is the same thing. Like we can't just, okay, maybe we can, but we probably want to really understand what is the root cause, really what is making you notice the symptom. Um,
Exactly, exactly.
it's
No, it's
fascinating.
true. And one thing that's nice about like Chinese medicine and what you're doing is, I mean, I do believe that uh, you could say that almost every physical manifestation has an emotional connection.
Mm,
Some people will go so far as to say that every symptom has an emotional root, and that may be. Um, and I'm not opposed to working on both angles, working with it physically, because I've also found that, okay, if somebody's has a lot of anger, say, and they have it stored in their liver,
mhm.
now their liver is tight and congested, and the toxins that are accumulating are making it worse.
Yeah,
So it's almost making it more difficult for the liver to release anger. So, reducing some of the toxins in the liver, but in inquiring from the person, I may find out that, well, they have a lot of stored anger. So the acupuncture, the change in diet, the nutrients will participate in clearing that. And I do a magnet protocol called the motion protocol where I muscle test and use magnets to help clear different emotions. A
mhm,
little bit different than what you do, less sophisticated than what you do,
mhm.
in terms of identifying, the original emotional imbalances. But it can also be it's helpful to identify the emotions that are playing out in the body that are, contributing to the problem. And
Yeah,
that's it's a really important thing to work on that level.
yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting to me as well that when a lot of the time when I speak to people, they really still don't really understand or take into account how much stress and life really can manifest in the body. And so I always say, if it's in your mind, it's in your body. It's that's that. So now let's
Right.
let's start and
Totally true.
yeah,
Yeah,
unpacking everything that is going on. But
totally.
Jonathan, let's talk about your book because I saw that. Is it 28 to detox? What is the name of the book?
It's a Total Life Cleanse, a 28-day program to detoxify and nourish body, mind, and soul.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Let's talk about that. It sounds good.
Okay, sure. So yeah, so since 1996, and I remember because my son was born in 96, and that's when we first started doing it. It's funny because the man that I started the Total Life Cleanse with I haven't seen him in many years. I'm going to see him on Saturday. He lives on the West Coast. I live on the East Coast, and we were discussing what we called our most difficult patients. And I was just starting acupuncture in 95, and people would come in, they'd do a treatment, they'd feel better, come back the next week, same symptoms. Like certain people just weren't getting better.
Mm,
And so we thought, a lot of these people are eating horribly and they have very little self care. I mean, they're not exercising, they're not meditating, they're not doing any kind of yoga or, nourishing practice to kind of help their nervous system. Let's put together a program that focuses on eating really clean. It's not a starvation program, but eating really clean, emphasizing breathing, emphasizing meditation, reducing media, for a period of time. And we discovered that it was pretty amazing, that people went from being difficult patients to really good patients, meaning that when they reduced the major stressors, dietary lifestyle stressors, and added some good things, then their ability to make progress, in their goals or health goals, it was like a quantum shift. It was just
Mm.
went from here to here. And no longer did I have to say, okay, great, you're down from 20 cups of coffee a day to 15 cups of coffee. Good job. Oh, I had 20 this week, whatever, or Snickers bars or, junk food or whatever it might have been, and so it gave people an opportunity to really focus. So we did that for many years. And at some point, I decided to write a book based on the cleanse, which includes really all the whys of why we need to focus on that a couple times a year. In Ayurveda, they recommend that people do some kind of cleanse twice a year, in the spring and in the fall. And and back then the air was clean, the water was clean.
Mm.
It's just like we like to clean the house in the spring. The body does better when we put a little focus on it a couple times a year. So the book is all the whys, all the seasonal components, and then it has a lot of information in a very practical, common sense way about Ayurveda, Chinese medicine. That explains how the organs and the emotions are all connected. Liver holds anger, lungs hold grief, but it explains all of that. And then that's the first half of the book, and the second half of the book is how to go through the process. So it's a good sized book, but from what I'm told, it's very readable. So it's like an enjoyable read. So I intended to make it, not because there's a lot of books out there that are very technical, very scientific. I mean, it has some decent science in it, but it wasn't meant to show how smart it was because I'm not that smart anyway. But it was really meant to be, practical so that people can read it, understand it, appreciate it, and also help encourage people to lean into discovering deeper parts of themselves, because that's a big part of it. That's one of my purposes is to, okay, you're not just a body and you're not just your emotions, and all of those things are important to heal, but you're something more than that. There's an essential nature in all of us that's part of the healing, is to get closer to that. And I found that doing these cleanses, people would kind of get more introspective and more interested in life and start to see the connection of nature with themselves. We're living in a world that's very, that it's not that everyone's disconnected, but it's certainly a challenge to be connected to nature and be connected to your inner self these days,
Yeah.
because of technology, because of the stresses in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But why 28 days? Why not 15 or 42?
Well, 28 because it's a full cycle of the moon,
Right.
and it's understood that a full cycle of the moon carries us through almost every emotion, every phase of the moon, and every connection with the planet basically puts us in a different state of mind to some degree. And it's different habit people. Some will say it takes 21 days to break a habit. Some people say 28 days. In some ways it takes a year or more. It can,
Yeah.
because you go through all the seasons also. Maybe in the winter I'm more stressed, or the summer I'm more stressed, or whatever. But in 28 days, a lot can happen in 28 days. And it's enough time for people to really uh, make some changes, feel the benefits of it, and incorporate some things into their life so that, they can carry on. And of course, I work with people, a lot of times people will do the cleanse and then they'll continue working with me to keep working on whatever issues they want to work on.
Right.
But the 28-day period is a really, powerful amount of time for a lot to happen in
But
those
you
28.
you're following the moon, but you don't need to start on the first of the month. You can start when.
Nah, because we don't always start. I mean, sometimes I do try to do that, but I don't always do that. It
And
is nice to start in a new moon.
right. And then if you if you so wished, you could just continue after the 28 days.
Absolutely.
That's a
Right.
there's no reason why you should now rest or something
Right.
like
Yeah, and the last class, for example, we always talk about, okay, what to do from here.
that.
You know, um, for example, around food, if somebody who had been avoiding wheat the whole time, which we do remove wheat from the cleanse. Wheat's not a bad grain, but modern wheat has become an issue for
Yeah.
many people, especially in America. I don't know, but like in Italy, maybe different. Um, I think now it's becoming more like American wheat, but even 10, 15 years ago, it was different. I had patients that couldn't eat wheat here, and they would go to Italy and they could eat all they want. So it's different. We also spray it with different herbicides and pesticides here, which make it much more damaging. So,
Yeah.
one of the things is, after 28 days of avoiding something, and then you can, okay, let me try eating this for 3 days, see how I feel. And then you can really have your own experience of, yeah, my mood changed. I got tired. I got a little grumpy. I got some gastric issues. And so you kind of know that this food I shouldn't really be having on a regular basis. And
Yeah.
by then people are feeling better enough that they can notice the contrast.
Yeah.
And they kind of go, oh, okay, now I have some degree of choice on what I do moving forward.
And I think that is definitely fascinating because I think we kind of go through life like this of not knowing, but just really feeling that things are not really going the right way, or that there's a lot of heaviness or blockages, or all of that. And I really like what you're saying, because I know I know it for myself, for something that I once done. Yeah, it brings a lot of clarity, and it brings a lot of realization of how stuck we are where we are at the moment. And as soon as we allow ourselves to actually change something, of course, if you read the book, and you kind of being guided on what to do, when to do, then it's so helpful, and actually really shows you that you have more choices than maybe you thought that you had before.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, when people realize, well, one, oh, I didn't even know that, just like I found out, I didn't know that for me, drinking a big glass of milk every morning was causing a lot of trouble. I had no clue. Really had no idea until I read that book. Okay, I'll try it, you know. And then when people feel better, they become inspired. And of course, when you feel better, you can put your attention on other things in life also. Things that we're not always as distracted by the body and by feeling, whether physically tired, mentally tired and fatigued, depressed. I mean, I think a lot of depression, not all of it, obviously, but some depression is because of what we put in our bodies,
Yeah,
you know?
and also, the nervous system, right? And the more stress
Exactly.
that it has, it's the more, symptoms that you're noticing. It's all really connected. And I'm
Exactly.
really grateful that we are having this conversation that really helps people to see how it is all connected. And that, yes,
That's
if you're
awesome.
noticing symptoms, you can treat the symptom, but maybe it's also really worthwhile to figuring to, go somewhere that to help you figure out what is the underlying root cause. And
Exactly.
yeah, and I think a lot of the time, a lot of people might not want to go from fear, right? They might know that they're not doing, what exactly they want to do, but there's a fear of change, right? Fear of,
Yeah,
what would they ask me to do if I do that? And I think you make it very compelling case here, that actually just try, and a month, 28 days, we can probably do something for just a month and just see how it
right,
goes.
right. Yeah,
So
the first few days are really about, letting go of things. Some people have already done the cleanse. They usually start day one, eliminating all the. We have the on list and off list, of the foods and everything. And there's plenty to eat. And that's the other thing, people's repertoire of what they can eat. And they'll try new recipes and they'll generally find out, oh my gosh, that's delicious. And I love that food. And, I'm happy it's not that difficult to make. And it just kind of expands people. And you're right, people, even when I do a cleanse still, because I often will do it with the group, it's like, okay, I got to make a couple changes. There's always going to be that resistance. It's just normal,
Yeah,
but usually 2, 3, 4 days into it, it's not a big deal.
yeah,
If someone's a real sugar addict, it's just going to take 3 days. I just tell people, tell everybody that you're going to be grumpy for a couple days. You're going to take a couple naps, let yourself sleep, let yourself nap. If you can take some time off of work for those couple days and just let yourself be grumpy for 2 days, it's
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
You
Or
know,
not.
uh,
Even that you need to honor. Yeah, or you can honor. You should honor. Um,
yeah, you can honor it. You're like, okay. And, sometimes we get a little permission to not feel fantastic all the time.
yeah,
And but it's not usually that intense for people. And I have to say that, we used to have like big groups. Now we do a lot on Zoom, and we have on my portal, we have videos, and we have, things that people can purchase. They can do it on their own, or they can ask for support. Um, but I remember like certain people coming in and hearing where they're coming from. And in the early days, I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a tough situation. I really didn't think this person would be able to do it. And
right.
then almost every time I would be proven wrong, where they get into it and they would just run with it. And I really developed the belief that human beings are very resilient if they're given the support and, the encouragement and the knowledge to do something.
Yeah,
And sometimes it means doing it with some other people or having some support, because it's not always easy doing things on our own. It just isn't. It's
no,
just part of being human, I think. We like to do
yeah,
things in a group. And you're going against cultural norms. You go to a party and, oh, you're supposed to eat the cake and the cheese and the ice cream and the alcohol all in
mhm,
one night. And if you're doing a cleanse and you can't do all that, you've decided not to do that. So that can be a little bit, oh my God, I want that cake. But that's the worst of it. And then people start feeling better within a week. They
yeah,
just start feeling lighter, their mind is clearer, they feel a bit more peaceful, less anxious. And then it all starts making sense. And a lot of those people that I thought could never do it can do it. So I know pretty much anybody can do it.
yeah.
I just know it. Yeah.
And I'm definitely going to get the book. I already marked it. It's already
Good.
on my radar.
Awesome.
Jonathan, it's nearly time for us to finish for today, but tell me,
Amazing.
what is one thing that you would like our listeners or viewers to go away with?
Okay. That's a great question. Well, I guess it would be, you are worth uh, doing whatever you need to do to feel your best.
Mm,
And I would say explore that, be brave enough, be courageous enough to take some steps, that there's so much potential to feel better mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And it's our birthright, and to go for it. And don't let fear or just the unknown stop you from doing those things that can really help you feel better as a
mm.
person. And it'll enhance your life in every single way. So,
And I must add that, your what you described earlier about, the kind of this conversation that you're having at the beginning with someone, maybe even we're taking the polls and looking at lifestyles and diets and stressors and all of that. You really do learn a lot about yourself when you go through that kind of an assessment, and I
absolutely.
think it has
Absolutely.
to fill you up with a lot of more curiosity and also more trust, because you're finding out things about you and like, oh, now I know
And
what.
often and oftentimes there are things that, and somewhere in our mind, or in our heart, or in our intuitive self, yeah, I kind of knew that. It's so often
Mm,
we're the most so-called normal person, whatever. Oh, so I think you might have some heavy metal toxicity or parasites or a sensitivity to wheat. oh my God, I've always thought that, and that they were right. They actually knew, but they just needed that confirmation,
Yeah.
and then the support to make some changes that can be really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, it's hard to go by yourself on something that you've never tried and never studied or anything like that. So when you have someone
Absolutely.
to hold your hand or in any way, I think that's a good thing. That's really a
Right.
good thing. Jonathan,
Absolutely.
I thoroughly enjoyed
Yeah,
our
yeah,
conversation.
I would, yes, I've so enjoyed it. I've so enjoyed it. Totally. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry if I think I may have cut you somewhere. You were saying something and I apologize if I cut
No
you.
problem. No
Um,
problem.
so I just want to say again, thank you so much for being here with us and for sharing all of this wisdom and really fascinating things that you helped us understand. Of course, I want to say to anyone watching or listening, please do feel free to get in touch. Jonathan is here to answer questions, to connect, to inspire your own journey of healing. And of course, a side note, if you enjoy this podcast, share it with other people. We are here to really make a change in the world. We want to bring this awareness that you can heal yourself naturally. So share the message if you will. Thank you
Great.
so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. May I just give my website real quick? Is that okay?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Go for it.
Okay. So the website Healing Essence Center. So the word Healing Essence Center, and there's all my classes and books and programs and things like that is there. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
And we are
It was
going
a
to,
pleasure. Thank you.
all of your links and everything are going to be in the show notes. So
Oh, great. Okay. Cool.
everyone can click and be taken to the right place.
Good. Perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.